Guys, welcome back to Why Wait. I'm Chris, and today we're talking about some mysterious things about RVs maybe you didn't know. I'm going to be answering your questions. I get asked a lot of questions, whether it's on YouTube, emails, or even just walking around the campground, and today I want to break some of those down. And a lot of things about RVs just seem to be mysterious. They just work different, they're built different. So whether today we're talking about lights or buttons or building techniques or the appliances, whatever it may be, I'm gonna kind of break down some of the weird, quirky things that just you may not know about and why they are the way they are. And remember, there's no such thing as a dumb question, just dumb people who make RVs. So, what is the deal with the giant gaps on the RV bathroom doors? I've seen a lot of posts where people can't have any privacy in their bathrooms without their kids sticking their hands under there, the dog sniffing. You know, it seems a little strange. You want a little bit more, privacy, some quiet time in here, and you got this massive gap underneath the bathroom door. As well as at the top of the door, you'll see gaps as well. Well, it's not just the bathroom door. As you can see with our pocket doors here, we have substantial gaps underneath those as well, and you may see them on the bedroom doors. Basically, it just all comes down to airflow. With the RV bathroom being such a humid place, you want that natural airflow. And by having the gap, you're going to allow and introduce fresh air from the outside to come in and keep that moisture and humidity down in here, because you definitely don't want the moisture building up in here. And that's why we run our fans. And speaking of running the fan, sometimes when you run the bathroom fan, you can create basically like a negative pressure, which could kind of pull basically scent from your black tank. It can kind of pull the smells out of your black tank up, and you really don't want that. So by having the gap there, and when you run this fan pulling air, it's going to pull the air from the rest of the RV, recirculate it in here, and keep things basically kind of smelling fresh and clean. And that's all it really comes down to. Same thing with AC and heating. You just want to make sure that the return air is getting circulated and moved around the whole RV properly. So one of the questions we get asked sometimes is, does my RV really need to be level, or why does the RV need to be so leveled? You see a lot of people really stress and worry about this, and we're trying to get them perfectly leveled. And for the most part, you're sometimes just thinking, well, what's the big deal? I'm not too concerned if it's not that level. So besides the fact of just the ease of walking around the RV, it's nice to have it level. Two main reasons. Number one would probably be the plumbing and the flow of the water through the pipes, the tanks, the sensors, and all of that stuff. If you're really off kilter and off level, you may not be dumping your tank properly. Some stuff may get left in there and things like that. And the second reason would be this guy actually right behind me, if you have an absorption style refrigerator. So with the absorption style refrigerator right here, it requires gravity to facilitate the movement of refrigerant. And basically that is going to prevent issues like ammonia crystal buildup, which can lead to overheating. In the back of these fridges, you'll sometimes see the coils, and they're kind of at an angle. And if you really don't have these properly level, that refrigerant may not move and travel properly through the back of the fridge, leading to some issues and, again, overheating. So sticking with refrigerators, another question I've got before is, how come you have a hose hanging out the back of your refrigerator? And sometimes you will see on these vents right here a hose sticking out, the little drip coming from it. People are curious, well, what is that hose, and why is it hanging out of there anyways? So you can see the hose right here. And what this hose is basically, if we go inside, you have a drip tray inside your RV refrigerator. That drip tray is picking up condensation from the fins inside the fridge, and that is going to lead into the back here. Now there should be a little tray back here that catches the water. Some people, instead of just relying on coming back here once in a while and either emptying that little drip pan out, they just like to run this hose through their panel and just have it constantly drip outside, which is fine as long as you have this little plug right here on the hose. The hose, basically, that little plug allows the water to slowly drip out, but not air to come back into the hose. You don't really want air and warm air going back up into the hose inside the fridge. And that's why I think some people just run it through and have it dripping outside. And for the most part, You really don't have to worry too much about this like pan overflowing with the water. It usually evaporates before it ever gets that high, but I do take it off sometimes, dump it, and just clean it myself because it gets a little funky. Now that's gonna bring us back inside, and we'll go check out the inside of the fridge with one more thing in there. Another question I get involving those fins I was just talking about. So as we were just talking about outside, you can see this drip tray right here. This catches the condensation from the fins up here. And there is a little hose attached to this that goes to the back of the fridge to, release that water. Always make sure after travel day that you check this little hose down here, this connection. Sometimes it's a hose, sometimes the tray just plugs into a hole. That can shake loose and you'll be trying to figure out why you have a bunch of water in the bottom of your fridge. Now, the second thing I get asked is, you can see this little wire right up here on top of the fridge, and it has a little metal piece attached to these fins. Well, what's happening with that is people want to know, hey, like how come my fins are freezing up, or how come it's freezing up in here? That's due to humidity. If you're getting a lot of humidity in here, this is going to start freezing up. So you have to kind of work on that problem. Now what you can do is you can actually adjust this thermostat that is attached to your fins. You can move it up or down. Basically, you're using convection, you're using heat that rises, and then cold air is push it down, the heat comes over the fins. So the higher you basically have that thermostat, the more warm air that it's going to sense. So it's going to actually try to cool down more. So that would be one way to keep the fridge cooler by sliding that up. Maybe if you're freezing up too much or it's too cold, even after adjusting it, you can slide that thermostat down a little bit on the fins to help out with that. Next question that I get asked actually quite a bit, that is going to be, what is this red light right up here? Let's go ahead and turn this on. This is our water heater for our propane. So you can see you turn it on, the light turns red. That's a good thing. That means that it is trying to ignite. It's called the DSI switch, direct spark ignition. Now that red light is going to stay lit. Once the propane burner is lit and everything's good to go, boom, the light goes off. That means everything is acceptable, you're good, you have fire, it's heating up. Now, if that red light was to stay on the whole time, that's not a good thing. That means that it did not ignite and you have a problem and you need to start troubleshooting and figure out what it is. If you always run your propane heater, if you always run your water heater on propane all the time and you just happen to notice that the red light is on randomly, you need to go check it out because it's not a good thing. It probably means that the burner's not working and something's not lit. Again, you need to go do some investigating. And we have actually had a few times where that has warned me of an issue. One time we left it running all night, woke up the next morning, the red light was on. I knew it wasn't supposed to be on. Went out there, we had a problem in this new RV right here. We went to turn it on, the red light never went off. I went outside, it wasn't igniting. I realized I had a problem with my thermostat. I had to go change my thermostat out and get it all fixed. But yep, so keep an eye on that. DSI, direct spark ignition, that's what that light is. And basically you really don't want it to be on for a long period of time. This next question I get asked a good bit actually at the campgrounds, and I'm always surprised by it because it seemed a little obvious to me, but I guess it kind of makes sense. People always ask me, what is this right here? They always ask me if it's a water filtration system. Well, it's a water softener, and then usually I get the follow-up question, why do you need a water softener on a camper or on an RV? And a lot of people just assume soft water, they think showers, hair, skin, that kind of stuff, which is great for the wife, but it's actually really important to keep your appliances and systems inside the RV working properly. Hard water can really cause some issues, especially with the water heater over time and your water pump. You get the calcium buildup, it dries up, and all this stuff will start eating away and really kind of seizing up check valves and things like that. So not only is it good for your appliances and water pumps and stuff like that, but hey, when it's time to wash the truck and the RV, nothing like using soft water so you don't get those hard water stains all over the RV and truck. So yeah, we've always run a water softener and definitely recommend it. So, question I get asked, do these bug screens void the warranty on these appliances, and why are insects attracted to propane? Well, first of all, they're not even attracted to propane because propane doesn't even have a smell. There's actually a chemical that's added to propane to give it a smell called ethyl mercaptan. And that is actually a safety factor. That way we as humans know if we have a propane leak. Otherwise we would never know because it's an odorless gas until they add this chemical into propane. So that's a neat tip. I learned that at the National RV Training Academy. Todd taught us about that one down there. But yes, these can and probably will void the warranty if you have a brand new RV and brand new appliances. But even Todd down there at the National RV Training Academy still recommends to put these on anyways, because we do not want the wasps and mud daubers getting in here, building up nests, backing things up, and your exhaust cannot come out. That's actually really dangerous. So, and what he recommends is that if you do have an issue with the appliance, all you have to do is just simply take that off before you take it to a shop and just, say, yeah, act like you never had it on there. These are actually fine to have on here. All I recommend doing is just make sure they're clean. You get plenty of airflow from the exhaust to come out of here. It's not a big deal. Just make sure they're not all bound up with dirt and mud or leaves from sitting for years or something like that. Otherwise, there's no issues with having these insect screens on. Like I said, even Todd Ensign down at the National RV Training Academy recommends to have these. We had them on our last camper. We had them on the back of the fridge, the water heaters, anywhere you can put these, the furnaces. I think it's a great idea. You ever wonder why these RVs shake so bad? I mean, we're sitting on tires, we have our legs extended. You think you'd be pretty sturdy, right? Well, not so much the case. That's where products like these RV SNAPPADS stackers come in handy. You always want to use some kind of stacking block underneath your leg to basically reduce the length of your leg extended. The less leg or jack you have extended, the less shaking and the more stable the RV is going to be. Now, we all know RV SNAPPAD has some awesome products, and we love using the SNAPPADS on our jack feet, which also helps stabilize and give you a firmer, wider footprint and grip. It also helps out with like sand and gravel from not sinking into the ground. But this new product they have, these RV SNAPPAD stackers, are really cool because not only can you stack them and use them to drive up on and level, but you can also form a good 6, 8, 10-inch block so that you can reduce how much leg you're putting out, which is going to stabilize the RV a lot better. We've been using SNAPPAD products for a while. We absolutely love them, and we've been really happy with these new leveling blocks because, one, they have the rubber coating on them so they don't slide around like the plastic ones, and they can withstand 50,000 pounds on top of them, which is pretty impressive, especially for a Class A motorhome like this. And as always, you guys can go check out SNAPPADS on their website and use our code YWAIT to save 10% off on any of their products. And we want to thank RV SNAPPAD for sponsoring this video. Now, I wanted to share a quick new tip that I just learned since we're talking about the National RV Training Academy. It's something I learned down there as well. And I saw it as a question that came up from them. They were getting a lot that, hey, my generator is running, it's working, but I don't have any basically 120 volt, power going inside. What's the deal? How come the generator's working, but my AC is not working? Well, a lot of people don't know this, or they just kind of overlook it, but there's an actual breaker on the generator itself. And for me, this is something new because we've never had a generator, so I'm glad I heard this piece of news. But I guess Todd was saying they get this question a lot. People didn't know about this, but I'll show it to you right down here. On these generators, you can actually have this generator on, working and running, but if you don't have this switch right here to on, if this is set to off, it's actually not going to send any power inside the coach. So that should be the first thing you always check if you're kind of confused while this is working and you're not getting anything inside to, well, basically work itself. While we're talking about power and having nothing working inside, some people have reached out to me and asked, hey, my campers, I have no power, nothing's working, I can't figure out what's going on, my jacks aren't going up, this and that. And it's usually the most common issue is that the battery disconnect switch is off. So most fifth wheels, motorhomes, we all have these battery disconnect switch for our battery. Put them in storage, battery disconnect switch, kills the power to the entire RV. Now, I will say if you do put it in storage, I would also recommend taking the batteries out if it's going to be there for a long time, because there's always still going to be some power going to that battery, but that's another story. But what I tell people is, did you check your battery disconnect switch? Because especially in fifth wheels, they're in the basement where we keep all of our stuff. It's very easy for them to get bumped, moved, knocked, and switched. So that was a simple question that I actually helped my neighbor with one time. He was having an issue. We went right to the battery disconnect switch, and sure enough, it looked like it had got switched to off. So that is something you can always go check on. And if you don't know what that looks like, it's just the red switch on the wall, on, off, you'll see it right there. It's always a simple, easy fix, and the first thing you should check in a situation like that. Now, remember when I said there's no such thing as dumb questions, and this was one that actually confused me for the first few years of RV life. What's an inverter? What's a converter? What's the two differences? And I kind of always knew what I had. I just can never remember if it was the converter or the inverter name. So it's a question I've gotten before, and it's pretty basic. Almost every RV has a converter, and the converter is simply taking 120 volt AC power and stepping it down to 12 volt DC power. And then an inverter, which is usually not on all RVs, it's usually on mostly motorhomes until you get solar packages. Basically, an inverter is going to take that 12 volt DC power and it's going to step it up to 120 volt AC power. So if you have an inverter and you're boondocking, you can usually run a residential style fridge or an AC or things like that. If you don't have an inverter, you're not able to do that because you can't run anything that runs 120 volt without having the inverter. So just to clear that up for some people, like I said, it's a kind of a confusing thing when you first get into the RV life and the RV world of which is which. And the last one, a question we get in the wintertime. People ask us, why are my RV windows fogging up and wet when I run my propane? I'm running my propane and it's basically causing my windows to get all, fogged up with condensation and wet and dripping. Well, believe it or not, it's not the propane that's causing that. The propane is all, exhausted outside of the RV. The gases are exhausted outside. It's obviously because the propane is heating up the inside of the camper and it's cold outside. So you basically just have humidity, condensation, cold, hot, same as you would a car. You have people inside the RV, whether you're running propane or not, we are breathing out the carbon dioxide, the gases build up inside, and it's going to create warm air. It's going to basically just get the windows wet and drippy, and that's why you see it more in the wintertime versus in the summertime when you have your ACs running a natural dehumidifier to take that out of the air. Basically, all you need to do in the wintertime, and it seems kind of weird, but you actually need to introduce another air source into the RV. You need to actually open up your vent air fans and crack a window and suck some cold, cool, just basically new air into the RV to help with that condensation buildup on the windows. So guys, that's it. I hope this helped you out. These RVs can be a little strange, tricky. They're built different. They run on different systems. Sometimes it can take a few years of living in them to really fully understand everything, how it works, and why things are built the way they're built, and these lights and buttons and all that kind of good stuff. So as always, appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you next week.